All right, so welcome everybody. Tonight, I'm so excited to be here. I was very happy. Denise and Maria and Braden and I thought it would be fun and a great idea to share this information with you in this type of format. So we're doing it via Zoom, so you can come to us at at your own time from your own home. And I hope you're feeling comfortable and you have a snack and a beverage and you're here with us as you can be. So we're excited to talk about what happens in a Montessori elementary classroom. There seems to be this mysterious mystery about what happens in there. We have an idea of what happens in the primary classroom, and we've talked about that before. I'm sure your guides connect with you about that a lot. And if you have a child in elementary, you probably have a window into what happens during the day. But tonight we're going to talk a little bit about what's behind that, like what's the thought behind that. We also wanted to include some answers to questions that we hear a lot from families. So you'll hear some common questions that we get from people wanting to know more about, well, how is this going to be different from my neighborhood public school, because my neighborhood school is really good, and what are the benefits? And well, how's the transition going to be from going from Montessori to middle school? Because that can be a tricky transition for anybody. So those questions I thought were best answered by alumni. So I reached out to a handful of kids that I've known since they were 3. And yes, some of them are in college now. So that's how long I've been at the school. But I was happy to call them up and ask them if they would send me, just record it on a selfie and send it in and answer one of these questions. And I sent them a bunch of different questions to choose from. And interestingly enough, they each chose a different question, which is really just so typical, right? So tonight we'll be able to hear from them directly. One of our alumni students was sending it from France. She's teaching English as a second language in France right now. So our emails and texts going back and forth were just kind of fun. Anyway, so you'll hear from her. You'll hear from a student who's taking a gap year this year. You'll hear from one student who is she's in her senior year of high school, and another who has graduated and is actually working at our school now and plans to be a guide when she graduates. So she's in college right now, taking some of the preliminary courses that she needs to take before she steps into the master's program for Montessori elementary education. So you'll hear a little bit from her too. So I want to say hi and welcome to Maria, who is our elementary guide. I have deep respect for this woman, you guys. So I'm so happy that she's here. And so I'm going to kind of be talking, but I might turn and say, hey, Maria, what do you think? To hear from her background and her experience. She's been doing this a long time. She's deeply rooted in Montessori, and particularly Montessori elementary education. She knows children that are in the second plane of development really well. So if there's anything I missed, Maria, I just want you to turn your mic on and say, hey, and add whatever you'd like to add. Sound good? Okay, cool. Well, let's carry on. So first, you may want to know, what is the transition from primary to elementary? Some of you may have children who are still in our primary program, and I see a few of you look like you're in our elementary program now. But if you're curious about the transition from primary to elementary, here's what you can expect once they hit that second plane. And we talked about that in our earlier gathering together when we were talking about the transition. The kindergarten year and what the transition into second plane looks like, right? So we'll kind of build a little bit on that and talk about, what's happening in this secondary stage when they're ready to move to the elementary program, which is very similar in some ways and very different in many ways as well, to meet the needs of the child who was growing physically and emotionally and spiritually and cognitively in all those different ways. Right? Maria Montessori was a physician and a scientist at heart, an incredible and keen observer of children, and was able to see patterns, right? And create materials that sparked their curiosity and their sense of wonder, and created a space and an approach where we could prepare the environment, introduce the children to the environment, and we as the adults really get out of their way, right? We call traditionally call the adult leaders in our classrooms guides, because that's what they do. They guide the children, offer a little nudge when necessary, and back off when necessary too, so that they can really dive into where their heart is leading them, where their mind is leading them, where their curiosity is just aching to find out more about. So we'll talk about more of that as we go through. But you'll see on this slide here in front of us, this secondary stage is it comes around the age of 6 to 12 years of age. That's a big span. And here are the things that you can expect and look forward to. So number one is a reasoning mind. So they're interested in logic and what is reasonable and what is true and what is fair. And they're having an explosion into their peer connections, the peer connection and friendships, and what is just and what is equal, what is, so we're having lots of those conversations, right, Maria? How often do you hear that's not fair in a day? A lot. So they're figuring out how to speak that for themselves, and to figure out how to negotiate that with each other, right? With the guidance of the adult, but often without the interruption and the interference of an adult, right? So reasoning mind. Next is the development of abstraction. So they're moving from this is real, bears don't talk, to, oh, maybe my imagination is growing bigger and I can conceptualize bigger ideas and think more abstractly, think more into the future, right? They're beginning to become more social beings, right? They're learning how to co-relate, how to be friends, how to have a fight, how to make up, how to recognize when somebody does something that's mean or that's rude, or we just talked about that today, the difference between rude and mean and bullying behavior. And what's an upstander and what's a bystander? How can I be an upstander when something is happening socially in the classroom or on the playground? How can I help my friends and stand up, right, for justice and what is fair, right? So they're diving into their social selves, creating friendships, creating relationships, working together. So you'll see more of children working together in our elementary program, more than you would in the primary classroom, where they're more interested in their own individual work. Yeah. So Maria calls this a metamorphosis stage, right? So Maria, if you want to talk a little bit about this, like what this metamorphosis stage is. The lessons start with material and end in paper. What can you speak to what you mean by that?
It just means there's two different things here. Now, metamorphosis, it comes to in this year, in this span of 6 to 12, the child is going through a transformation that is very radical. And at the beginning, things are very sensorial, using material, but eventually this reasoning mind that you're just describing is doing the work of putting things together faster, especially as they are growing older. So then the paper becomes the last step, the last stage of the lesson, whether it is a lesson on math or whatever, or whether it's a research project. So it's just all relates to that, the steps that are taken faster, because the developing brain can definitely do it. It's engineered for that.
Mm-hmm. All right, great, thank you. And you'll see the prepared environment. Just as in our primary and toddler classrooms, the environment is meticulously prepared for the students to be able to have at their fingertips what they need, right? So they reach to the guide or the assistant in the classroom only when they need something that's not available. Like maybe they're out of black construction paper and they need to get some more. So they'll reach to an adult to help them out and find that. But you can see these are pictures of our current Montessori class, Montessori elementary classroom. It's kind of hard unless you zoom in, but I believe there's opportunity. Is this right, Maria? You've got some parents who are coming in to observe their students in the classroom. So that's happening as well if you have a student in elementary. So you can see it firsthand. However, you can take a look at these pictures and see that on the shelves are materials that are at their fingertips. So they could go to a particular area and pull out the materials that they've had a lesson on if they need it for maybe connecting with another work that they're doing, right? Or diving into that work again and again and again, as long as that material and that experience with that material still fulfills that need, right? So yeah, this is kind of a window into what it looks like in an elementary Montessori prepared environment. Now, you'll have the classroom, and yes, there's all sorts of experiences that are available to children in the prepared environment. When children move into this secondary stage, this second plane of development, their attention turns from right here, here I am and my family and my classroom. It opens up to the community. What's happening in the community? What happens at the grocery store? What happens at the bank? What happens at the art museum, right? So what's really cool is that going outs begin to happen, right? And there's a lot of excitement, right? So what do we want to have for snack this week? I don't know, maybe we make pesto pasta salad. Okay, let's find a recipe. What do we need? We need these ingredients. How much is that going to cost? Let's make a list. Let's get some money from Miss Anita, and I have an adult to go with me, and we take a walk to QFC, buy the ingredients, bring it back, and prepare snack. So there was bread baking this last week, which was made the hallway smell so good. But they were interested in making bread, and so they did. They figured out what ingredients do we need. They went to get the ingredients, they came back and made it from beginning to end. So not only just going out to the grocery store, they're able to connect with, you'll see in this first picture, they were doing it, someone was really interested in all the different bridges in Portland. So we went to see them, and they could go make sketches, ask people who built bridges, how they built it, did research about how does it work, what are the different types of bridges, what are the names of the bridges. And that you can get from a book, but wow, when you could go and actually see the bridge and touch the bridge and be right up close to the bridge, you have a deeper learning about that structure and about what it is that you're interested in firsthand. So that's a couple of examples of going outs. I believe, Maria, aren't you guys going to the Audubon Society coming up soon? Right.
Yes, we're going, but this is a field trip where we all, as a class.
Oh, everybody's going
together. Yes, because going outs are in small groups. Mm-hmm. And right now the one that we're doing coming back from the pandemic is every Thursday we cook. And now we're starting to do field trips as a whole classroom.
Okay.
In preparation for little by little going to have more of these small going outs.
Right. Are you guys going to do your camping trip this year?
We are. I'm in the process of that right now. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Oh, the camping trip. Oh my gosh. I think that one of my favorite parts of the year is when all the elementary students and the staff who go with them and chaperone return from the camping trip, because everybody is filthy dirty, exhausted. Everybody smells, and they're so excited, with that kind of excited, tired. They want to tell you about everything, but they just want to go to sleep too, because the camping trip has been so full. It's one of my favorite things to see that happen, and the transformation that happens within the community, because on those types of trips, they really form connections with each other as friends and colleagues in a sense. Okay, so that's what I want to say about going outs. So let's see. Let's talk a little bit about some different aspects of the philosophy that you may or may not be aware of. And here are just a few. So number one is there's an individualized plan for learning, right? So you see the teacher in this slide, and this is a picture of Jennifer Dannenfelser, who was a guide of ours some years ago, and who now is a Orton Gillingham tutor, for some of our students. So she's still around the building every now and then, but you'll see her here working with a particular child, figuring out, okay, where are you? What are you working on? Thinking about what is the next lesson? What is the next extension? So every child has an individualized plan, right? So Maria, how often do you meet with students to go over where they are in their process? It's pretty regular. So if you think that, oh, it's an individualized plan, children are just doing whatever they want, with guidance. So they're doing what they are inspired to do with guidance on how to do that thing that maintains purpose. Right, Maria, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. Every week I meet with them and on this regular basis, and I write the choices of the works that they want to work on. I always ask them what they need help with, and I always ask them what lesson that they would like me to give them. And so we always touch bases for the little bit amount of time. Sometimes we do have a conversation about specific things that I observe, or sometimes they will mention things to me. So it's kind of like a very personal moment where we connect weekly. And that really helps me with planning for the next week and the future, as well as also getting to explain to the child how is it that he or she can, organize themselves to be responsible for their part, basically. So yes.
And it's true that, and I see it in action all the time, but if you're not a parent who's in our classroom all the time, you might miss the piece. I mean, you might hear, oh, Maria meets with them once a week, but that's not the only time. I mean, there are touch points throughout their week where Maria connects with them or they connect with her, right? So there's a constant and the ability to observe. So Maria and the classroom assistant has a great responsibility to be on top of what's happening with that child. Something's different today. What can we do to support that child? What does support look like for that child? This seems to be an interesting pattern that's emerging. How can I address that? Right. So part of the responsibility of the adults in the classroom is to observe and to take notes and then create a plan of action. Right. So we might notice, play on the playground's getting a little rough or a little physical. And I'm starting to notice that I see some feelings happening. So before it gets big, the adults will come in with a grace and courtesy or introduce a game that might address the skills that they may be lagging. Right. So it's done in a way that's not, it maintains the dignity of all the students. Right. So it's not like you're having a problem with that kid. We need to figure that out. It's how do we together as a community figure this out? In morning gatherings, they might talk about, what's on somebody's mind. What's on your mind, Ava? What's on your mind, Amy? What's on your mind, Maria? And so there are times when they can have community conversations and discussions and dialogue and figure out together, how are we as a community? What's our vision for our classroom? What's our mission? What are our agreements as a classroom community? Yeah. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's carry on. The next step is an aspect of self-regulation. So children have the lots of practice to regulate their emotions and to regulate their pace and what they're interested in and what they're working on in particular. Okay, so they have practice and they have a space to go and take deep breaths if they're feeling big emotion, or if they're feeling overwhelmed, or if they're feeling like they just need some space and they just want to go and read their book without interruption. So the idea that everyone has a deep respect for each other is evident in the classroom. When someone is reading a book, rarely will you see another child come and mess with them. Sometimes you do. And then that's where the adults can come in and help guide them to something that they might be interested in. Or more often than not, an elder, a fifth grader or a sixth grader will come over and do the thing and be the leader, because that's what they have grown up with each other knowing how to do. Next is the idea of friendliness with error. So this is a cornerstone of Montessori that you see everywhere, infant, toddler through middle school, high school. The idea that we learn from making mistakes, and we're human and humans make mistakes. So you'll often find in someone who's been in a Montessori classroom or in a Montessori environment will make a mistake and, okay, I made a mistake. How can I make it right? And there's not a huge fall apart. Sometimes there is, right? And they've got a community around them that can help them self-regulate if necessary and remind them, hey, you made a mistake. What do you do next, right? And often in that error is where we learn, right? Some of those, do we all have something that we've learned through a mistake and we realize, I'm never going to do that again, right? Okay. Next is the idea of reflection, which kind of taps into what we've been talking about already. There's time and space and permission given for children to reflect on what they've learned, to reflect and decide what's next. And that freedom of movement is given within limits, right? So I think of, what's the phrase? With freedom comes responsibility, right? That phrase, and another phrase that's similar is freedom within limits. Right? So you've got the limitations or the construct of the classroom, and within that, there's a great freedom. And from that practice in making decisions and self-regulating and making mistakes and making it right again and thinking and reflecting what happened, what can I do next? That's what you'll see happening in waves throughout an elementary Montessori classroom. Next is support for the emotional well-being. So our children are well practiced in how to resolve conflicts. So if we see that there's a lagging skill in that area, then Maria will give a grace and courtesy, a how to do a thing, how to resolve a conflict, how to stand up for someone who might be having a hard time, or someone might be doing something that's not so kind. How can you be an upstander, right? How can I be kind in my classroom? How can I be respectful, right? So those are the cornerstones of what the early in the year classroom agreements that the whole community agrees about, right? And that connects with the responsibility for the community. So often you'll see a child will see, sometimes with some prompting, they may need some prompting, but if there's, say, lots of pencil shavings around where the pencil sharpener is, it might just take an adult going, look at all these pencil shavings. Almost always, there'll be somebody close by who will tend to that. And there'll be somebody who will say, well, I didn't do that. Yeah, I get that. And you're part of the community. What can you do to help somebody out? Oh, if you see that Chloe's jacket has fallen out of her cubby, just pick it up and hang it up for her, because one day Chloe might pick up and hang your coat in the cubby as well, right? So how can we be responsible for our own community and not just what I do? I didn't do those pencil shavings, so I'm not going to do anything about it. I didn't drop that coat. No, the expectation is if you see something, what can you do? How can you contribute to the greater community? Okay, so let's see. So Maria, here's where I'm nod to you to add in some things here. This is the idea behind lifelong learning strategies. And soon you'll hear some of our alumni talking about how their experience in a Montessori elementary classroom has impacted their lifelong learning strategies. So in a Montessori elementary classroom, you'll see loads of collaboration. So right, Maria Montessori knew that young children at this age were interested in collaborating with each other, not necessarily collaborating with an adult. So yeah, that's where we step way back and allow that collaboration and some of that, I want to do this, well, I want to do that. How do they come to collaboration and mutual respect? By allowing that error to happen and that kind of bumpy to smooth collaboration that always happens when we can stay out of the way. That collaboration taps in or feeds into their research skills, right? So somebody might be interested in airplanes, okay? And they have to, okay, what are we gonna do? Because we're both interested in airplanes. Okay, let's do some research. How can we do the research? There are books in the library. Maybe Miss Caballero can help us find a website that we can learn about airplanes, or I can find the name of somebody who makes airplanes or who flies airplanes, right? You see where I'm going with this? So they research it and they have to figure out, I want to present on Friday. I'm on the board to present on Friday. So I've got to manage my time and my project to make sure that I have something to present on Friday, right? They have to think about, okay, well, what's my framework for learning and exploration? How are we, you and me, interested in airplanes, going to figure out how do we learn about this, right? So the guide and the other adult in the classroom may come in and offer some guidance, like, I wonder. And then the child can make the decision rather than an adult saying, you oughta such and such. So we don't take away that aha from the child. We might offer the, that's curious. Oh, I wonder what you're gonna do about such and such. And then the solution comes from the child, and we can't take that away from them, right? Anything you want to add to this piece, Maria?
No, I mean, I would like to listen to, and I would like our audience to listen to the alumni, because they really, they touch on all these things that you're talking about, and yes, so I don't want to be redundant.
Okay, we're getting there. Okay, but I do want to talk about responsibility. I have a responsibility to talk about responsibility.
Okay, let's do it.
This is a piece that actually Braden said, hey, let's talk about this. So this is Braden's slide. So hi, Braden. But in the Montessori elementary environment, in the training, they refer to the tools of responsibility, right? So that includes the work journal. So children keep a journal of what they've been working on. They have teacher conferences like Maria explained about earlier. And one of Maria's responsibilities is to make sure that they're meeting benchmarks and that they're progressing in their ability to read and comprehend and process information, that they're advancing in their ability to understand and manipulate numbers and math, et cetera, right? So through the tools that they have, through their journals that you see, their work drawers that they have, through these tools, the child collaborates with the guide to build accountability for their time in the classroom. Right. Okay. So to touch briefly on the how does Montessori curriculum compare to what you would expect in a traditional environment? So we've talked a little bit about the individualized plan versus an age-targeted curriculum where everyone in the classroom is working on the same thing at the same time, where you might see that and expect that in a more traditional school environment. The idea that mistakes are to be made and we learn from growth versus a fixed mindset. There's a culture of community that happens in a Montessori environment. Excuse me. And often the work that our children do crosses modalities. So it's not that you won't see a child working, how do I say, only on one thing, one modality at a time. Often other modalities are woven together. So art and music, math, geography, language, cultural studies, science and social studies, and practical life often come together to kind of enrich the fullness and the experience of what it is that they're learning about. So if they're interested in bones, they might I don't know, what might they do? They might count bones, or they might draw a skeleton. They might sort different types of bones. They might diagram the parts of bones. They might learn about archaeology of bones around the world. What are the origins of the names of bones? How do other cultures approach death and burial? What are the shapes and purposes of bones? How do they work? Maybe they decide to go to the grocery store and they make bone broth, right? So maybe even a dance inspired by bones. And that comes from a child going, "Huh, I'm interested about bones." And it could just go so farther than what we can imagine when we can help prepare the space and let them go, let them soar. Okay, so now's the time when we're going to dive into some common questions we get from families. So these are some questions that Braden gives loads of tours, so he hears a lot of questions. Maria has fielded a lot of questions from current families and past families and potential families, and we found there's some common ones. So let's ask them. So here's one of the most frequent ones. What's the transition from Montessori to middle school, and how is that gonna work? Because middle school is so weird anyway. How are they gonna transition? They won't know anybody. That's gonna be so strange. I'm worried about this transition. So let's hear from one of our students about just that. Okay, so it's gonna take me a second. I have to stop sharing here. How do I do this? Hold on. And I'll screen share here. And please, no judgment on the number of tabs I have open, okay? And let's see, we're talking about Eva A here, so she'll go first. Please give me a thumbs up to make sure you can hear
Hi,
this.
my name is Eva. I went to Portland Montessori from kindergarten to 5th grade, and I'm a senior in high school now. And I'm going to talk a little bit about my transition from 5th grade at Portland Montessori to 6th grade at a public middle school. For a lot of people, this can be a challenging time, not just switching from Montessori to a public school, but also just the switch from elementary school to middle school. It's a different environment. But I think I learned a lot of skills in Montessori that helped me with this transition, specifically like knowing what my strengths are and working to those strengths. Also, I felt like when I went to my middle school, I was like slightly ahead of everyone, specifically in math, at least for me. I felt like I had already learned what we were doing in 6th grade, which for me was helpful because then I had time to spend my time making new friends and focusing on the subjects I didn't have as many strengths in. So that was really helpful for me, just having that cushion in my education. And then I also think in Montessori, I was able to really learn how to make friends and like build community, which was a big thing in my elementary school classroom. Most of us are still friends today. And I think that the learning to make new friends really transferred into my middle school experience. I was able to make new friends pretty easily, which was a lot because of my Montessori experience. And I'm very thankful for my Montessori experience, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Oh, my heart, it just kind of gets me a little bit. Yeah, I knew her when she was 3. And now look at it. Okay, let's see, we'll go back here. So I'm curious, does anybody have any thoughts or questions that you want to add in now? I know we haven't opened it up to the audience yet, but feel free. If you have a question, raise your hand, or it's a small group. You can turn on your mic, and if you have a question for me or for Maria about the transition to middle school, now's a great time to do it. Okay. Well, let's carry on. Another common question that we get from families is, how will my child's Montessori experience impact their future? So Maria, how often have you heard this? Is this the right choice for my child? How are they going to be when they move into college or into high school or in the adults they're going to become? So with that question in mind, I'd like for us to turn to Henry and hear what Henry has to say. All right, there's Henry.
Hello, everybody. My name is Henry. I'm 19 now, and I was in the Portland Montessori School from my 1st to 5th grade. And I think that the most important thing was word takeaway I would have from my experience in Montessori education when I was younger, and I experienced at the Portland Montessori School, was that it didn't just teach me what to think, it kind of taught me how to think. And it taught me how to look at the world and how to kind of look at the world and think independently about what was around me, about the whatever obstacles or problems kind of presented themselves in my life. And not only was that important for me throughout my middle school and high school after I left, but it's also been very important to me now as someone who, since I graduated last spring from high school, I've been on actually a gap year, traveling around Europe and parts of Asia, and in all these new places where I'm not super comfortable and where there's a lot of things that are very foreign and different to me. I think that education, that foundation that I got, that I kind of built at a young age has been really coming out, where I can look at different obstacles and look at this place and the things around me as kind of a sort of puzzle to solve. And I can kind of just on my own, I have like the drive and the motivation to independently really figure things out and figure out, I don't know how to get over any obstacles that come with traveling, being somewhere new, and how to really adapt to these places as I go through them.
Yeah, so there's Henry. When he first sent that to me, I thought, oh my gosh, when did that happen to your voice? But it happens. Any thoughts or questions that you have from what Henry had to say? Okay. All right, well, we'll carry on. So I'd like for us to hear from another alumni. This is Isabella. She started when she was 3, and I can remember like a solid 2 weeks of her crying because it was her very first time being away from her mom and her dad. It was a very first experience outside of the home. And she has grown into this just fireball of a woman who is really making a difference in the world. So it's kind of sweet to see the transformation for her. So here we go. Let's listen to Isabella. Okay, hold on. Thanks for your patience, everybody. All right, you see her okay? All right, let's go, Isabella.
Hello, my name is Isabella Smaytek. I'm 18 years old, and I attended the Portland Montessori School for 8 years, from preschool through 5th grade in 2015. I still think about those times with very fond memories, and still to this day consider them to be some of the best and my favorite years of school. I've seen the impact of a Montessori education, not only on myself and my friends, but I continue to see it on a daily basis today. This year, I've been teaching at an elementary school in France. Now, this school is not a Montessori school. However, all of the teachers, including the director, work very hard to implement Montessori practices and values into their daily teachings because of how valuable it can be. Along with this, my coworkers, who are also parents, have their children in Montessori schools or in schools that practice Montessori values and teachings. I see my students learning some of the most important life skills that I too learned at the Portland Montessori School. Self-advocacy, communication, problem solving, connection, teamwork, and independence. Montessori allowed me to have a foundation of these skills to which I both add to and draw from every single day. When I finished at the Portland Montessori School, not only did I leave with this toolbox filled with the most important life skills, but I also left with lifelong friendships and connections that are still incredibly strong to this day. If I were to ever have children, I would send them to a Montessori school, or at least a school that implements Montessori values and teachings, because of the impact, the positive impact and the value it has and has been proven to have on young children. Sending me to the Portland Montessori School was one of the best decisions that I think my parents have made. So to any parent that is considering the Portland Montessori School for their child, I would wholeheartedly recommend it.
Wow. Go, Isabella. So that's Isabella. Wow. So does anybody have any questions about that? Or about what she said, or comments that you'd like to share? Okay. Well, let's carry on then, shall we? Okay, another common question from families is this: what will my child gain from Montessori that they wouldn't in a different setting? So let's see. This is, let us hear from Anne. Anne Gottfried actually is the daughter of Mr. Kurt in Cloud Classroom. And she's also the daughter of Miss Liz, who's one of our substitutes, who is often in the Wolfpack classroom. So let's listen to Anne. Okay, and I'm going back. There's really gotta be an easier way that I can do this. All right, here's Anne.
Hi, my name is Anne Gottfried, and I attended Portland Montessori from 2006 to 2015, including 5 years in the elementary program. Something that I remember most from my Montessori elementary experience that I still think about today is the material called racks and tubes, which is used in the elementary classroom. It's used to teach long division, and you distribute beads on boards in different decimal places. And the beads are stored in groups of test tubes. Racks and tubes, they're in tubes. In the total, the material contains several hundred beads, each about the size of a pea, a little smaller. And once every couple of months, someone using racks and tubes would manage to spill the entire thing on the linoleum floor, and the beads would bounce and fly off in every direction. And some classrooms use caps on the tubes to prevent this kind of catastrophe, but we were not one of those classrooms. And today in college, picturing an entire classroom's worth of children, plus teacher, plus assistant, on their hands and knees gathering those beads still brings a smile to my face. And that's the kind of thing that will stay with me forever.
So you can hear her joy in thinking back of the times when, you know, what was a catastrophe being something that was a little bit different. Right? So she thinks about those, and she has those memories of everybody coming together. In addition to remembering the material itself, the racks and tubes, right? Maybe you've heard your child talk about racks and tubes.
And I have to say that happens every year, several times throughout the year. So it's not just that one specific moment with her.
Yeah. So you may wonder, why don't you put caps on the tubes? If we had caps on the tubes, then there would not be the experience of the catastrophe that happens, and everybody stops what they're doing and runs over and helps and picks them up. So that process, talk about community building, am I right? And counting them all, how many of them are there in all of the tubes?
Yeah.
So many.
Well, yeah, it's funny, I have never counted them. I was thinking about that, but maybe it's like 600 or something like that. But what it is like, and you mentioned it earlier, the material is made to be handled with balance and with care. And when that happens, then purposely everyone, you know, who is not going to help when something like that happens, no? So it's just so interesting how everything is part of this complex web of supporting that independence that has been, you know, mentioned throughout their comments. So
well, speaking of comments, let's go ahead and we'll listen to Eva, who is an employee now at our school. So she's in college right now, working with us part-time, and in college doing her preliminary work to apply for maybe Montessori Institute Northwest or another Montessori training program to become an elementary guide. So let's listen to what Eva has to say.
Hi there, my name is Eva, and I just wanted to talk about what I think my best experience was from elementary Montessori. I think it was really the ability to be really independent and responsible, from things like, having weekly jobs, and part of it being snacks. We would take care of our pets, taking care of our classroom, really showing an appreciation for each other. I think that independence and responsibility that we had in elementary sort of bled over into another aspect that I really enjoyed, which was how we were really a family. We were there with a bunch of different age groups of students, and part of all those jobs is taking care of each other. To this day, I'm in contact and friends with still a lot of people that I knew since I was 5, even younger from primary, but in elementary, I feel is really where we made bonds, where we were able to, do jobs together, plan stuff together, share a lot of interests, and really grow together and help each other out. But yeah, I'd definitely say that family feeling that I had, and that independence and responsibility we were given, were the 2 best parts of elementary Montessori for me.
So there's Eva. All right. So let's go ahead and we'll round out our time together tonight. Here we go. There it is. Can you see? Yeah, there's Eva. All right. So to step briefly into the beauty of the mixed age community, a little bit that Eva talked just briefly about. But when we have a mixed age community from 1st grade through, right now we have a span class. So we have up till, let's see, I believe Seymour is 5th grade, but we can go up to 6th grade. So right now we have a span class. Typically it's 1st through 3rd grade, and then 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. So that would be coming when our community continues to grow, right? But the beauty of the mixed age community does a lot of things. So it helps to eliminate unhealthy competition between students, because everybody's at a different level, right? Children have the opportunity to learn from each other. It encourages mentorship and inspiration by others they admire. It offers opportunities for leadership. It mirrors real life. So when they grow into college and beyond, they're not going to be working with people their exact same age and experience and level of growth. There will be a lot of diversity and a lot of variety of types of people that you work with. So it offers an opportunity to experience that as this is a normal thing, right? It offers a consistency of community, because they really get to know each other really well. And they can see each other and know for themselves that they can learn at their own pace. And there's not pressure to push way forward, or that they're lagging behind. So that's one of the responsibilities of the guide, is to help keep them in a forward motion in that way, right? So empathy and friendship is one of the cornerstones of Montessori. You can hear from the alumni that talked tonight that was a deep piece of their experience and what they remembered. And also you can hear their connection to materials. I mean, Anne is going to remember racks and tubes for the rest of her life. They're going to remember how the materials made them feel, how the experiences and the research and the going outs made them feel, and how they grew intellectually, emotionally, spiritually, cognitively, physically, all of that. They will recognize and remember how that made them feel and how they grew and what that felt like growing through that. So we'll end on, before we open up to questions, of course, with, we got to have a Maria Montessori quote. So here it is. Maria Montessori said that our care of the child should be governed not by the desire to make him learn things, but by the endeavor always to keep burning within them that light which is called intelligence. So that one always kind of gives me a little bit of a goosebump there. All right. Now I know that most of you have your cameras turned off, but if you're still here and you want to turn on your mic and ask a question, Maria and I are here to happily answer them as best as we can. I do see a question in the chat box about how many elementary guides and classrooms are there at TPMS. Right now, we have one span class, first through fifth grade. Right now, Maria is the head guide in the classroom, and Hilda is the classroom assistant. And sometimes we have someone come in, for example, Liz might come in and do the going out to the grocery store, or Pearl might come in and help out with the going out. So we have people who can step in and assist with the going outs as it necessary and as it happens. But right now we have one classroom. All right. Renee asks, will we be able to access this recording? Yes, absolutely. So in a little bit, once this downloads, I'll send it to Braden, and Braden can make this available. I'm sure it'll get added to the next e-news that goes out, the link to be able to see it. So we'll do that. Absolutely. We'll send it out to the greater community.
Thank you.
You're welcome, of course. Any other questions?
Oh, I have a question.
Oh, hi, Jess. Was that, wait, Jess or
That was
Kendra?
Kendra. Kendra can go
Kendra.
first.
Okay, hi, Jess. Welcome. She's our board president. Welcome. All right. Hi, Kendra. What's your question?
I was wondering, like, so say if a student, say, is not meeting the benchmarks in a certain area, like math, or like need to work on their handwriting or any skill, but they're not really interested in doing that. How do the guides like make sure that they get to where they need to be in those areas?
All right, Maria, this is your
The benchmarks are a guidance. We do have our own milestones. So, and the program it goes from 6 to 12. So this is a very important thing to understand, that all these people that have been interviewed, most of them have had those 6 years. So in the span of 6 years, you have a lot of room to do many things, and like Amy was saying, everything is interrelated through what is called in Montessori words, lingo, is the cosmic education. So as she was explaining everything, if you want to study bones, you can end up cooking broth, but usually what happens is that sometimes that child is a child that needs more time. Sometimes is because in is more time with other subjects in order to connect to that subject. Sometimes it has to do with a difficulty that needs to be addressed because it needs to be supported. So it is very individualized. That's why we come from backgrounds of being following this factory model where everybody needs to meet certain things at a certain time, and it doesn't work that way. We humans, we are very complex creatures, and we can't perform as society writes that we should, because that's not how our brain works. Which is another thing that we were talking about earlier. All these milestones, all these group engineered lessons are because the brain of the child is ready for that. So it's very complex. Sometimes also the group helps with what the child seems not to be interested in the primary, because it's all more primary is very individualistic, but in elementary, when somebody sees somebody else doing something, there's this curiosity. Or you might have also, one of the things that finally we are able to do is to visit the primary and to present the things that get to be finished to as a practice for what it is to give a presentation of what you learn. So there's this complex network that is built through the years. So it's not 1 year, it's 6 years. And if there is something that needs to be attended, then is being, examined by the guide, of course, and then, assess, and then it's a partnership, going back to this idea of when that we're coming from now, where we need to finish the textbook on this page, and then we know it, right? Which, going back to what they were saying, this alumni, when you are given the tools to become a problem solver, maybe you might not have the skills to do certain things, excelling on this specific thing, but as a Montessorian, you find a way to connect you to where you need to go. And maybe, like another one of them said, I was able to do other things because math was my strength. No, so it depends on the individual. It depends on the family, how the family also sees the education of the child, and how everything is supported at home, as well as what are the priorities. No, so it is, we are embellished in a philosophy. That is the hardest part of this topic, that it's bigger than just a list of things.
Right.
It's a way of life.
And that's our next one that's coming up. Our next gathering.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Kendra, for that question.
Did I answer your question? I'm sorry, Amy. Did I answer your question, Kendra?
Yeah, you did. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else? Tyler, Maureen, Renee, Lauren, Jess?
Hey, thanks. First of all, thanks Amy and Maria for putting together this session, and the effort, and to Braden, who I know isn't here tonight, but had a big hand in it. So appreciate the effort that went into this, especially reaching out to the alumni. I thought that was really helpful to kind of hear it in their words.
They were happy to do it.
Just shocks me that like an 18-year-old can be so mature. So that's kind of, that was a good reminder at how much they are really adults at that point in some ways. I thought Eva's notes at the end or her comments at the end were a great summary of kind of all the points that you were making earlier in the presentation too. And I was glad to have the first question be about transitions, because that was my big question coming into this. And I wonder if you can share, it was helpful to hear one person's thoughts, but if there are other anecdotes of families, or, whether it's at middle school or at the 4th grade level, and what sort of other experiences you hear children having when they leave Montessori and enter a more traditional classroom. And while I'm still talking, I also wonder if there's an opportunity for parents that do not currently have children in the elementary room to do observations at any point.
Maria, you want to take that?
Yeah. Well, I've met different families with different outcomes. What I can tell you is the more the child stays in the program, the more benefits that are reaped from it. But it does have to do with how the family resonates with the method, and the way of understanding that sometimes things take longer for specific things. No. So everything is very, very specific. The common threads, which also, let me just go back to what Amy was touching on before, that related to the abstraction. No, the child of the elementary years is a child that at the very end of it is ready for things that are already in the abstraction. So you, in the middle school program, if let's imagine in this beautiful world of having a middle school program in our school, there won't be any materials anymore. because Montessori follows a child, and the child of the middle school years does not need the material anymore. So when you transition to a middle school, there's not that shock of, oh, what am I going to use now? I've already used racks and tubes, and I already know how to do, division, and I already know how to actually use division in different settings. And now I know that when I solve this problem, I need division, for example, no? So in that regard, the transition is more, we work a lot with helping them to organize their time, to be self-reliable, and to understand what it is to be responsible for that throughout the process of these 6 years, especially in the progress of and the process of research. So you're doing all this with them, and they're arriving to middle school where things are already starting to practice that. So that's what this alumni was saying. Well, it's just easy, because I already knew that I could have the time to have friends, and even she said too, and I was able to do other things that I was not there with the way she was feeling about math. But this is just a specific child. And you might be thinking, well, they haven't interviewed the ones that didn't work out, right? But the real thing is it is very specific to the child, and the longer the child stays, the more benefits are. But we don't see them. It's like Amy now, it's just with teary eye, she's seeing these changes and thinking, wow, where has this child, where I met this child with tantrums, and here it is, wow. She was so serious too, by the way, talking.
Serious. Yeah.
So,
and it takes into consideration every child's temperament, because every person is different and is on an arc between high intensity and low intensity, forward or withdrawing, or so whatever their I don't want to say personality, but whatever their individual temperament is welcome, right? So they're able to be settled and confident in that. So when they make a transition, or if they make a move to another environment, they have a confidence about them that is okay, and they can handle all the cafeteria drama. Remember middle school drama in the cafeteria? Anybody? Or what happens in the girls' bathrooms, right? Like all the drama that happens. Often you'll see children who have gone through our program have a confidence about them that's different from other children that, in my experience, that I've seen. It's just a different level and a different ability to express themselves and to organize themselves and to stand up socially for each other, and to realize, this work comes easy for me, this one's harder. I know how to manage my time so that I know how to think, I know how to learn, right? So it's not it's not a new skill, which many middle schoolers and high schoolers are beginning to learn.
right. And another thing that I just want to add too is just the social aspect to they've been practicing for all this time to be in people, to get into moments of difficulty or helping each other, or just being part of everyday moment, being them, not having that time to do it when is playtime, because we can't talk right now, we are in class, for example. So it's you have the freedom to be a person. You practice and make mistakes, and you have these confrontations and disagreements and these sad moments, but this happiness of sharing and this wonderful gift of friendship that is, I've heard it throughout all the conversation, all these comments that were made, as well as other experiences that I've heard from other alumni that I have, that these friendships are they really last for a lifetime. They've been kept in this place of sacredness, no, because
They've had that growth together.
they were there. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Academically, physically, emotionally, all of those areas.
6 years, 6 years, 6 years.
No, let's get that middle school program. Okay, so we're a little past time, so I want to be mindful and respectful of your time. So if you need to go and get somebody really to bed or maybe back to bed, please go ahead and do that. Know that there'll be a recording of this, but I want to say thank you so much for coming. It's been really delightful to be here and to have Maria speak her wisdom. And for all of you to be here. Thanks, Jess, for coming. Thanks, Braden, who's not here, but who'll probably see the recording. Thanks for your guidance and wisdom and activation to make this happen. Yeah, so that's all I have. What's that?
I just want to say to Jess that observations, yes, you just call the office and just ask when will be a good time, or send me a message so then I can, hook you up.
So is it best for them to connect you directly, Maria?
She can send me a message, yeah, so then I can coordinate with her, yeah, definitely. Or whoever is interested in observing.
Maria, would you please put your email address in the chat box so people have that?
Sure.
So it's pretty easy. All of us at the school are our first name dot last name at portlandmontessori.org. It's pretty easy to remember, but she'll pop that in the chat box. So if you want to reach out and connect and create, find a time to observe where we're not on a going out. You don't want to come when everybody's at the Audubon Society, right? All right.
No, not this Thursday.
Oh, all right. Now, if that's all, or if you have something, now's the time to raise your hand. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. So thank you all for coming. And until next time, I'm happy to stick around for another 5 or 10 minutes or so. Maria, I know you may need to go because you've got your family to tend to. Mine are grown up and gone, so I'm good. But I'll go ahead and stop recording now.